Alright, well, welcome everybody to the history of Japanese metal. Woo!
Now, if you were here for the history of Japanese metal, the elements, material, that's not this one, but hopefully it was a happy mistake, because we are talking about metal.
So, and why are we talking about metal at an anime convention? Well, I mean, everybody knows all the best openings to songs, as you saw from the previous guests right before us. They're kind of metal.
They're all metal.
They're all metal. So we're just going to run down a basic history of Japanese metal, how it's evolved, what its effect has been on not only Western cultures across the world, but everybody. Because music is the universal communicator out there. That is what we can all understand, whether it be we don't understand the words that are being said, we all understand melody, we all understand rhythm. And that's what it's so important about. And it also intertwines so well with what we're all here for, our favorite animes that are out there. So, unless you're all here just for the history of Japanese metal, well then thank you for that.
All right.
Well, let's start it off. So why Japanese heavy metal? And it's because Japan is one of the main centers in metal across the world.
Yeah, there are more metal bands from Japan than any other country in Asia, and as we all know, Asia is the most populous continent in the world.
What about 2/3 of the population out there?
Yes, and I would say about 1 in 3 bands, metal bands from Asia, are from Japan.
And Japan does have the second largest music industry next to America, so that is pretty significant.
Yeah, and the market is so important that many Western bands do go to Japan, tour Japan, go to Japan to stay alive for a while at times. There have been ones that have been flailing here, and they go over there like, hey, well, people still like to listen to us here. So yeah. And just to illustrate, that's the mark for Japan, the number of bands from Japan, and that's the rest of Asia.
Now, full disclosure, we discounted Russia
and Indonesia, because those are both transcontinental countries, so screw them. You see here, we have, that's again Japan. That's everyone else.
You can see a focus there. You can totally see a focus there.
Now, if we did want to include Russia and Indonesia, no one does. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Screw you, Russia. Anyway.
Totally ruined our part. But to really talk about metal, we got to start at the beginning of things, and that is the dawn of metal.
Yes.
And who does it all start with? Everybody knows it. It's Black Sabbath. I mean, you can't start a metal conversation without talking about that.
Yes, Black Sabbath in the UK, and it all starts really with the song Black Sabbath, written in 1969, released in 1970. We'll give a little taste of it.
And by the way, it is a prerequisite for metal videos to have those scummy stashes and stare creepily into the camera. There's supposed to be more sound going with it. The actual song Black Sabbath is going on. Hey, he surprises us all, doesn't he?
Fun fact, Ozzy Osbourne, one of the first instances of recorded headbanging. Not this, but his live show in Paris. Him and I think actually Bill Ward headbanged while growing. Not the first headbanger, the first recorded. Yeah, he didn't hear, but he was also playing a live show.
So that song you would have heard right there is Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath from the album Black Sabbath.
Based off the movie Black Sabbath.
Based off the movie Black Sabbath. And that song did come out in 1969, and that is considered the first metal song ever written.
Yeah, the first true metal song. Everything else kind of maybe had some elements going to it there. Big thing, as we see, Tony Iommi is lead guitarist, legendary guitarist. He tunes down his guitar for this, And he also plays with more power chords, and that really develops the metal sound. He does that, of course, because he chopped off part of his fingers.
He didn't do it on purpose.
Yes, but he was
It's kind of an accident.
But it was also in a metal factory.
So if you noticed in the video, he had these little things covering his fingers. That was to give him fingertips, which he didn't have.
Yeah, and he tuned it down to make it easier for him to press down, because at the time there was only standard weight guitar strings.
Yeah.
Later, he makes his own custom strings, and people make other kinds of lighter strings, and that allows him to do other things as well.
So some of the big things from that song right there was the use of the tritone, the devil's interval. You know, how more you can't get a more metal name than the devil's interval. So, and that was something he didn't invent, but it was something he used more than a lot of people, again, to help him play a little bit easier.
Yeah, and the song itself was written by Geezer Butler, their bassist. It was, again, based on the movie Black Sabbath, was also a horrific vision that he had back in the day when he was experimenting a little bit with occult things that terrified him and actually scared him away from that. But he made this song based off it.
Yeah, and when the first time they played this song, I believe it was, 1969, they got a huge, incredible reaction. Now, if you
From
don't
a
know...
crowd that didn't really care about what they were doing before that. This was the last song they played, and everyone was just like, oh, whatever, these blues guys.
Yeah, because they were a blues band to begin with. And a lot of heavy metal bands, people don't realize were blues bands to begin with. And so then they come out with this, and boom, it blows everybody's minds.
Yeah, everyone's just goes insane. So they say, hey, let's keep doing this, and they get a record deal. You know, that's cool. And in 1970, they released the album Black Sabbath. Later that same year, they released Paranoid. So they're working hard, and Paranoid obviously really cements metal. Tony Iommi says, after he sees the success of Black Sabbath, he says, well, I guess this new sound, people really like it. I'll go in and let's really dive in. And they make Paranoid, which really solidifies things.
Well, let's move on to the dawn of metal.
In Japan.
So the first metal band we're going to talk about is the Flower Travellin Band.
The name doesn't necessarily sound as metal as it actually is, but they start in 1967.
But Brendan, didn't you say the first metal group was Black Sabbath in 1969?
Yes, I did, Brian.
So how can you have a metal group before that?
Well, Brian, thank you for that completely unscripted question. Well, you see, again, they start as a fast blues band doing covers of Western blues bands. And guess what? In 1970, the same year that Black Sabbath was released, this band does a cover of Black Sabbath. Quick turn around here.
They hit the Japanese shores really quick.
That was their album Anywhere was their first full album under the name Flower Travellin Band. And the next year, in 1971, they released their album Satori, which is considered the first instance of actual Japanese metal. The whole album's not Japanese metal. Some of it's bluesy, kind of like the first Black Sabbath album. But it has what is the most.
But with a new genre of music, we're seeing it start to bleed into other parts of music.
Yeah.
We're getting it in more albums. They're not necessarily coming out with a full metal album, but we're taking steps that direction.
And this band is big in more than just Japan. Like, they are big as being the first, but they also have huge influence. For instance, the Les Claypool Lennon Delirium band, which is the band of Sean Lennon, the son of John Lennon, and Les Claypool of Primus. They this year did a cover of Satori, but this is the original Satori. We'll play a little bit for you guys. That is part of the song. Not feedback.
You gotta start those metal screams. All right, so that's the start of metal right there in Japan. So we'll go through metal in Japan. In the 1970s, it was sparse. It wasn't huge. There wasn't a lot of metal out there. It was, mostly hard rock bands delving into a little bit of metal. Just
some blues bands as
well. Blues bands as well.
There are some large Western rock bands that start coming in the late 70s. There are bands like Kiss starting to tour Japan. There are bands like Aerosmith. There are Judas Priest, we'll talk about, will also be in Japan in a little bit. We do start seeing some predecessor bands develop, and we'll talk about some of those.
And so we'll go through some of the notable bands in the 70s, and we'll start with Sensuken. This group started in 1974 through 1976. So
yeah, so short period, but they do, they're a predecessor band. They do redo their songs as the band Action, who is a more metal band, come out in the 80s. And some of their songs
of their own music.
Yes, they do.
As a different band.
Yes. They do make them a little bit harder, but they're still there. Bow Wow is an interesting one because they changed their name a lot. Sometimes the Bow Wow, again, we see 1975 to present. Various points they were Bow Wow. At various points there's Bow Wow without the space. Whatever, now I think the Bow Wow again. And they'll probably change it tomorrow. But they were one of the first to gain fame in Tokyo. And they do open for Aerosmith and Kiss tours in Japan. So that's helpful. That does help get this kind of sound out to more people as who are coming here, going to concerts to see these Western bands, but they're picking up these local bands as well.
Especially in the 70s. I mean, most of us weren't around in the 70s like that. But Kiss and Aerosmith, huge groups. Yeah, I mean, so if you get to travel around with one of those groups, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so then another band we had is Nokimono from 1978 to 1979, so short-lived, but their claim to fame is that they won the Yamaha Battle of the Bands and actually got to tour with Judas Priest.
Yeah, we said Judas Priest, they toured in 1979 in Japan. They also end up releasing one of the first full-length, mostly metal albums in Japan, and that's a big deal. And these guys are opening for Judas Priest, one of the big three of metal. That's getting huge exposure for both metal, Judas Priest coming and saying like, "Hey everyone, it's time to rock," and they're also finding out, hey, there's already these big metal bands here that are awesome. Their first mostly metal album also places them a few years ahead of some of the other really big bands that will really help metal explode that we'll talk about in a little bit. Influenced by Bow Wow, which we just talked about, and Judas Priest, which, hey, if you get to tour with the band that influenced your image and your sound,
It influenced me,
yeah, that's
all it is. Just a little bit. Then another one of the big bands of the 70s is Marino. Their first day, or the tail end of the 70s. Their first demo was out in 1979. But they are one of the first to have just a straight heavy metal sound.
Yeah, now we're getting into the territory of people that are just like, we're a metal band. We don't delve in other stuff. Now we say kind of till present. No one's really sure if this band ever broke up or not. They just released albums like every 10 years or so at random times.
Releasing an album today.
Yeah, they still do stuff. So that's what we say, kind of. But yeah, they definitely have that new wave of British heavy metal sound. It's not the doomier sound that was more popular in the 70s, but this is the late 70s, so we are starting to hear more of that more aggressive, faster new wave British heavy metal influence.
So that brings us to the